This is problematic as hell. Why are we making filters like this? I feel like this is just causing so many issues. I don't look like this. Let me show you what I look like right now. And I just woke up, so I look busted right now. I know that I use filters sometimes for funsies, but like I would never use a filter like this and make people think that that's what I look like. That's problematic. TikTok, people, you need to stop making filters like that. Stop comparing yourself to people on the internet. You're beautiful the way you are. If you're having a hard time, if you're struggling, know you're not alone. Know that I love you and you're beautiful.
Today I decided not to make another video about feminism. I'm taking a break from that topic for now. Instead, I want to talk about something else. I want to talk about something that looks harmless on the surface. Something that many people use every single day without thinking much about it. But I believe has serious consequences, especially when it comes to women's mental health. I'm talking about beauty filters and the digital versions of ourselves that social media is creating. A few months ago, I made a monologue criticizing aspects of the cosmetic industry and how it has turned body image struggles into a business opportunity. I talked about procedures like BBLs and cosmetic enhancements and the relationship between insecurity, beauty standards, and an industry that can profit from people wanting to change themselves. My argument was that sometimes industries do not just respond to insecurity, they can also manufacture and amplify them. They can create a standard that many people feel pressure to chase and then sell the tools and procedures that supposedly help people reach those standards. Recently, I looked at one of the pictures I took about 3 years ago, and honestly, it was funny to me because it didn't really look like me. Not completely. The face has been improved to some degrees. It became a version of myself, but not exactly myself. It's a more handsome version of myself. It doesn't take much to realize that there is a difference there. All you need is a pair of eyes, and luckily everyone have at least one. What happens when someone grow up constantly seeing the edited and more perfect versions of themselves? What happens when the filtered face becomes the face they see more often than the actual reflection? There is a difference between occasionally using a filter for fun and living in an environment where platforms are constantly presenting an idealized version of yourself to you every day, 24/7. Yes, my generation, we were lucky, I would say. We grew up in an environment where filtered and perfectly beautified faces were niche and seen once in a while. The danger is that today kids and teenagers are living in an environment where idealized versions of everyone is more than the real pictures. Have you ever thought about the last time you posted a picture of yourself without editing or filters? No one does that anymore. 99.9% of the pictures on Instagram or on social media generally of people we know are edited and filtered. Even phone cameras come programmed with filters and beauty softwares. Smooth skin with perfect symmetry. So people, especially kids, are beginning to slowly internalize those images as reality. The danger is that the brain can start comparing reality to something that was never real in the first place. And when people begin judging their real face and their natural appearance against digitally created versions of humans, that is why I think we need to start paying attention. Now, some people might say, but edited images have existed forever, and that is true. Photoshop and image retouching are not new inventions. They existed when many of us were growing up. But there was an important difference. Those edited images were niche, like I said before, mostly limited to celebrities and magazines and advertisement billboards. We knew we were looking at a carefully produced image and it was something distant. Today, that technology is in everyone's pocket. The average person can wake up, open their phone, and within seconds compare their face and body to thousands of edited and carefully presented images. The difference between ordinary people and manufactured beauty standards have almost disappeared, and I think that is what makes this era different from the one we grew up in. There is a growing research and discussion around the relationship between image-focused social media platforms and body image concerns. Platforms where people constantly see carefully selected and edited images can create an environment where comparing yourself to unrealistic standards becomes normal. And this is where I think beauty filters becomes very, very interesting. Unlike many people, when I look at my picture perfect versions of myself. I almost find it comical. I never allowed that image to become my identity. I knew it was a filtered picture. I could look at it and laugh because I understood the difference between the digital version and the real person. The power of beauty filters is not just that it makes you look different. The real power is that it shows you a possible version of yourself. A version that appears more attractive and more symmetrical and closer to whatever beauty standard the algorithm is rewarding at the moment. It creates a comparison between two versions of you, the real you and the digital you. You easily realize that a filtered version receives more attention, gets more likes, more compliments, and more positive reactions. The brain begins to associate that artificial version with approval and acceptance. The psychological implication is that people then begin to question themselves. If people love this version of me, maybe I should try to become that version in real life.
Natasha is 14 years old and says she suffers from a mild form of selfie dysmorphia, a body image disorder defined as a need to heavily edit one's own digital image and an intense dissatisfaction with one's own appearance after using digital filters. And in severe cases, it can lead to drastic actions.
But one of the strangest I had was a patient who really wanted bigger eyes, like the actual filter had given. It wasn't possible to give her bigger eyes, and I tried to explain many times why surgically and non-surgically this could not happen.
That's the cosmetic surgeon who coined the term selfie dysmorphia after noticing an alarming trend among his younger patients.
Usually before, way back, patients would bring in pictures of celebrities, so it may be Angelina Jolie's jawline or someone else's nose, and it helped them give them a way of describing what they needed to the physician, which was okay. What then I started noticing were people were using altered and filtered versions of themselves. They wanted to look exactly like that image.
There's another part of this conversation that I think is important, and that is the relationship between beauty, attention, and the way social media platforms are designed. The reality is that humans are naturally drawn to a polished face and visually attractive images. So these things often get more attention. People are more likely to stop scrolling on social media and watch longer or press the like button when the creator or image they are looking at have certain beautiful facial aesthetics. Social media platforms understand this. Their entire business model depends on engagement, so they naturally develop and promote tools like beauty filters that help creators produce content that get more reactions. Creators eventually discover the same thing that platforms discovered, that certain appearances perform better. If a filtered picture receives more compliments and likes and more engagements than the same picture without filter, and that creates a feedback loop. The human brain is designed to repeat behaviors that receive rewards. When someone notices that the edited versions of themselves get more positive attention than their natural appearance, it becomes very easy to start relying on that edited version more and more. The human brain adapts to repeated exposure. What we constantly see begins to feel familiar, and what feels familiar can start to feel normal. Imagine spending hours every day looking at faces with perfect skin, altered proportions, and carefully applied makeups. Over time, that image can subconsciously become the reference point your brain uses when judging beauty, and then ordinary human features can start to feel like flaws to you. The desire to become more attractive is a very powerful human desire. It can motivate people to take care of themselves, which is not a bad thing. But when that desire is combined with unrealistic digital standards, it can push some people towards extreme decisions, including procedures they may not have considered without that constant pressure. The most dangerous thing a filter can do is not change your picture. The most dangerous thing it can do is change your perception of yourself. I can argue that filters have essentially become the gateway to get more people into performing various cosmetic procedures on themselves. And that is where my concern with the relationship between filters and the cosmetic industry begins. Because a filter is not reality. A filter can change anything instantly. and create an image that may not be physically achievable. But when people start trying to turn a digital fantasy into a reality, then there is a problem. Cosmetic procedures are not the same thing as applying a filter. They involve real bodies and highly invasive, and many of them quite very dangerous. My concern is that the beauty industry can sometimes sell the idea that all you need is one Botox or one surgery or BBL to fix everything. But that is not true. Once someone begins to surgically work on themselves invasively or inject themselves with cosmetic substances, they rarely stop at one. There is always another insecurity that will need fixing after the first round. And this can turn into an endless search for perfection that does not exist. Today, some cosmetic surgeons have built entire brands around transforming the appearances of influencers and celebrities. Sometimes these influencers receive procedures for free as a form of promotion and an advertisement for the procedure itself and the surgeon. This is not me saying that every person who uses filter will develop a problem. That would be objectively false. A filter used occasionally for fun is not the same thing as someone feeling like they cannot present their real face to the world. That right there is the problem. A lot of people, young and old, now feel they cannot exist in the real world with their natural looks. Those people exist, and that is the problem. This is the consequence, and what happens when these tools become part of everyday life, when the edited version becomes the default version. Because these technologies are not natural. They interact with our emotions, our insecurities, and our desire for approval. My reason for making this video is simple. I want people to understand that these things, even though they look harmless, can have real effects on how we see ourselves, especially kids. Use them if you want, but be conscious of what they do. Be aware of the difference between enhancing a picture and allowing an artificial image to redefine your perception of yourself. And I want to be clear. I am not making this argument because I think people should not care about their appearance. Looking good and wanting to present yourself well is a normal human desire. But there's a difference between taking care of yourself and entering a constant competition against an impossible standard. As a man, I personally don't feel the same level of pressure around appearance that many women experience. Women historically and socially have often faced stronger expectations around beauty and appearance. Whether they actively choose that competition or not, it doesn't matter. The pressure is there. That is why I think this conversation is very important, because many women are navigating a system that constantly tells them how they should look. The Kardashians, Hollywood, celebrity culture, the entire cosmetic industry. What really makes me think about this issue is imagining what these technologies would have done to many of us when we were younger, as mean they were around then. Every 12 and 13-year-old has something they felt slightly insecure about themselves growing up. There were things about my appearance that I thought were flaws. Looking back now, many of those things naturally resolved on their own as I grew older and bigger. Some features that seemed like major problems at 12 or 13 are simply normal parts of growing up. That is something every young person experiences. But I sometimes wonder if we had access to these filters back then, at that vulnerable and highly impressionable age, constantly seeing an enhanced version of yourself would have definitely been more problematic. In fact, it's more problematic. Because adolescence is already a tough period where many people struggle with their confidence. And adding technology that allows young people to constantly compare themselves against unrealistic versions of themselves creates a completely new challenge. And parents must understand this today about their children and the potential impact of these exposures and comparisons on their kids. Kids should be allowed to be kids before having to deal with these supposedly harmless technologies like social medias and filters. Of course, social media is not harmless. The reality is, these technologies are here to stay. They are not going anywhere anytime soon. In fact, they will become more advanced and sophisticated. The line between reality and digital creation will continue to become harder to recognize. So, if these tools are here to stay, the best thing we can do is become more aware of how they affect us. One thing about new technologies is that society often discovers their consequences after adoption, not before. Many technologies that change the world were initially viewed only through the benefits they provided. The possible negative effects sometimes became clear years later after millions of people had already been affected. For instance, cigarette. I think social media, AI, and digital identity technologies may be part of that same conversation. The people creating these tools are discovering their negative impacts alongside the rest of us. So that does not mean these technologies are inherently evil, so should be rejected. It means we should be thoughtful about them because something can be entertaining and useful and still have terribly bad consequences we need to understand. There's also another interesting consequences of this trend, and that is how it's affecting online dating. Now we have a situation where people are not always presenting themselves as they actually are. And when real life meets, it becomes a clear case of what I ordered versus what I got. That might be just one instance I feel positive about filters, that it is raining online dating. Now, some of you may already know my opinion about online dating. I'm not a fan of it. I think it's a terrible idea. But regardless of whether you agree with me or not, the bigger picture remains we need to be more conscious of how these technologies affect our perception. So, how do you navigate this whole filter apocalypse? First, understand that a digital image is a digital image. Do not allow an edited version of yourself or someone else to become the standard for reality. Secondly, reduce unnecessary exposure. If a platform is constantly making you compare yourself to unrealistic images, stop using it. It's as simple as that, very simple. Some people may even benefit from stepping away from smartphones and social media entirely, at least for a while. I've made a video about that in the past. Try using dumb phones and distance yourself from the internet. It's worth it, at least for a week or even months. Human beings did not evolve to see their own faces every day. For most of human history, seeing your own reflection was rare. Maybe you saw yourself in still waters or in polished surfaces. We did not wake up and immediately stare at our faces from multiple angles and compare it to thousands of other faces and receive instant feedback about their appearance. So the human brain was not built for this level of constant self-observation. So maybe part of the solution is not learning how to create the perfect digital versions of ourselves. All you need might be just a break from social media and the internet as a whole.